All right, so some of these challenges that I identified already, you've already picked out or highlighted in the poll you just took. The virtual classroom interrupts the normal day-to-day activities of what a classroom looks like. We don't have those moments to interact with our students before and after class in the same ways we used to. You may not be as available as you once were to your students because you might be asleep while that student in Singapore is trying to email you with a desperate attempt to find out more about the assignment. The way that you deliver feedback may have to change. Maybe you're a professor who writes notes in the margins of papers, underlines, or gives some sort of feedback in that way. You're going to have to rethink how to send that feedback to students. In general, you'll have to rethink the kinds of assessments that you're having. One, because the time is shorter, it just doesn't work online. You're going to have the concern of these new technologies. Are you going to be able to use Sakai tests and quizzes effectively? Are your students going to be able to get the training and have the support to take a test online or submit it in the way you've asked them to? The last challenge that's going to come up is some of these students are not going to be able to get to class at the time you're holding class for various reasons. And you're going to have to account for that when it comes to assessment and tests and assignments. All right, so I'm going to get into how to deal with specific assessments in a minute, but I just want to give us a couple of considerations, options on how to find solutions that will work. I want to encourage you to be flexible about the different forms their assignments can take. So that might mean that a student who's having trouble recording themselves talking about a certain concept, like making a video or an audio recording, maybe you allow them to write a script about what they would have said if they had the technology to record themselves. How can you adjust an assignment to meet where they are? The second thing, I know you're all worried about your final exams. I'm going to encourage you today to modify that traditional multiple choice and short answer exam. Figure out how to make it work, how to be a little more open book with it. I need you all to really sit down and think about what's possible now. Are there elements in your syllabus that just can't work? Do those explorations of the tools or talk to one of us so we can say, I don't know how you're going to do that, how to rethink it. All of these students and yourself are going to have to practice new technologies, new delivery systems, new everything. Give yourself time and your students time for practice. If you're going to have like in class presentations from your students, make sure everyone understands how to share their screen, that sort of thing. And you're probably going to have to rewrite the instructions that you have for your assignments and your papers in order to make it explicit. As I mentioned earlier, you may not be available when they need you for your office hours. You also need to let them know really when I am available. I'll be online from 9 to 3 on any given day. You can email me then. I need to take care of my kids starting at 6 p.m. on. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be available. So you're going to have to investigate what you don't know ahead of time. Having some sort of test that they need, a quick Qualtrics form that they need to fill out after they're in the synchronous session or watch the asynchronous video is a great way to see if people are paying attention. Evaluating the strength of their contributions in the forum posts. Us in Learning Innovation can help you think about rubrics for grading participation in forums. We've already hit on the fact that you're going to have to drop some of those attendance policies or rewrite them. If, for example, if you have one where students will have their grade dropped after 3 absences, that just really can't be adhered to or needs to be rethought. There's going to be the issue of group work and how that's going to work, how participation in groups are going to work. If you haven't used peer review of group work of each other, you may need to think about that now. You don't have to make it an entire series of peer review, but at least students giving each other qualitative feedback or reporting to you where groups are falling apart is going to be really important, because you're kind of going to be working in a vacuum. And you may want to consider spending some of your synchronous time for students to get into breakout rooms and do their group work at the same time as class, because we know they're available during class time. We don't know about other times. So the next one are those major exams. Anyone who's into online pedagogy is going to say, try and figure out open book exams. How can your students apply the concepts of your discipline to real world engaging problems? You know, the COVID-19 challenge for all of us as a society probably is applicable to your discipline, like every discipline that's taught at Duke. What are the moral challenges? What are the engineering feats that need to happen to build new hospitals? Obviously, something like global health, there's stuff that can happen. The psychological experiences of students living at home with their families, their moms, you know, all those sorts of stuff. How can you think about getting them to write about those challenges instead of taking a typical final exam? That said, sometimes those things are not going to work. If you do feel that you need a traditional exam, think about making it optional. Perhaps you have enough work in your course that you feel comfortable with them getting graded without taking a final exam in a traditional sense. If you're worried about cheating, I cannot offer you any answer that will say, yeah, we can keep them from cheating. It is not feasible or economically viable to have people monitored with monitoring systems. Some of the proven ways to reduce the amount of cheating is to include the honor code before any assignment or test and quiz that's mounted in Sakai. You can have time tests, so they can only write the exam in a limited amount of time, just like a regular final exam. If you're concerned that they'll text each other and ask about the answer to number 2, have question pools that pull random questions. So number 2 won't be the same for every student. You can also randomize the order of when they see questions. As far as the technical solutions, there's Sakai tests and quizzes or Sakai assignments. We won't really have time to get into that probably today. And the last way that we can think about modifying the traditional final exam is showing your work instead of choosing a multiple choice answer, so that you can see the logic that's involved. The next typical assessment that we're going to talk about is papers. You may, like I mentioned at the start of this, you may need an alternate way to deliver feedback to students, especially if you usually write your comments in the margin of paper. Consider a couple of different things. If you haven't used something like having them submit Word documents to you and then you open them up and annotate or track changes for them. Consider learning how to do that. If you're pressed for time, consider screen sharing their work and creating a short video or audio file talking about that work so that you're not writing or not typing. You may want to think about changing the format of feedback so you are not the only person responsible for that. Again, you could use that time during your class to have students comment on each other's drafts. You can ask students to write a paper, think about it for a couple days, come back to it, fill out a form about what they noticed. We're also going to have the problem that always happens for undergraduate students, which is they'll write it all the night before it's due. And that's going to be, it's a continuing problem, but could be exacerbated. It could be influenced by the way that we're teaching now. So think about having them submit smaller bits of writing over the next 6 weeks or whatever we have left so that they have to be working on it before it's actually due. And if you're having any questions or want to think about how to rearrange papers, TWP will do a fantastic job of working with you to figure that out. I think Carrie Muskowitz is currently doing online sessions just on that topic. All right, so student presentations. If you have them doing that traditional PowerPoint or debate, whatever it might be that they do at the end of the semester, I would say that that's probably relatively easy-ish for them to still do online with you. But I would make sure that students have the ability to record it on their own time if they can't make it to a synchronous session, so they can submit it to you in another way. You may also want to reduce the time they have to be on the screen or be talking live just in case there's technical issues that day, and emphasize the strength of their script that they're submitting or some sort of narrative rather than the public speaking part of it. And again, I already mentioned that, but make sure everyone gets to practice the way that they'll be delivering that. And that's usually sharing their screen and learning how to do that before their actual session. All right, so you're feeling like you can solve some of these issues. You're going to have to share all that with your students. I'm hoping that some of you have already been working diligently on how your new syllabus looks. Be really clear with these students about the changes that are happening to them. If you had a grade breakdown and that's somehow changing, you'll need to share that with them. There may be changes based on the satisfactory, unsatisfactory grading that's happening now. Define how it's changed and set expectations of the quality that you still expect, and try to explain any examples of the kind of new work that you're hoping they'll produce.